Hi everyone, in this video I am going to talk in detail about the skeletal muscle. Basically, muscle cells are specialized cells that can convert chemical energy into mechanical energy. A force is generated and finally a work is done in the form of locomotion, peristalsis or pumping of blood by the heart into the lungs and the tissues. In order to perform these works, many different types of muscles have been evolved. So there are three different types of muscles in a human body. One is the skeletal muscle, smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle. So before moving into the subject proper, I would like to give a brief introduction about these three types of muscles. So skeletal muscle, as the name indicates, it is attached to bones and it is primarily responsible for the voluntary movement of a body and it is under voluntary control. As you can see in the picture, there are cross striations over the muscle, the reason for which I'll be discussing later. And skeletal muscles have the capacity to generate rapid force and the force can be maintained for a longer time. For example, when we stand for a longer time, the muscles of the lower limb maintain the force, that is, they remain in a contracted state for a longer time. And very important point about skeletal muscle is that it requires a nervous stimulation for it to contract, without which it cannot contract. Coming to the cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle is present in the heart. It acts as a biomechanical pump, driving the blood from the heart to the lungs and the tissues. And it differs in many ways from that of the skeletal muscle. That is, it has two important features. One, the cells are all interconnected. These are the interconnections between the cells. The purpose of these interconnections are that when one cell is stimulated, the impulses from one cell can be easily transmitted through the gap junctions to the other cells. So, the entire cardiac muscle will contract as a unit and this property is very important for it to act as a biomechanical pump. And like that of skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle also has cross striations and it is also a striated muscle. And another feature is that it has got its own pacemaker. Cardiac muscle cells have their own pacemaker. What are pacemaker cells? Pacemaker cells are specialized muscle cells that can generate electrical impulses spontaneously and rhythmically. Hence, cardiac muscle does not require an external innervation for it to contract. But still, it is innervated by autonomic nervous system, which has two components. One is parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. So what is the role of these nerves on the heart? So when we exercise, we need more blood to be pumped to the exercising muscles. So the cardiac output should increase, which requires the increase in the heart rate. So the sympathetic component, sympathetic nerves are stimulated during exercise that acts on the pacemaker cells to making it to discharge more number of impulses that causes increase in the heart rate and increase in the cardiac output. Whereas the parasympathetic nerves will cause decrease in the heart rate in contrast. So heart muscle is under involuntary control. Coming to the smooth muscle. Smooth muscle does not have cross striations and hence it is called a smooth muscle. And it is of two types. One is single unit smooth muscle and the other is multi-unit smooth muscle. So this single unit smooth muscle resembles cardiac muscle in a way that they are all interconnected and they contract as a unit and they have got their own pacemaker. Whereas the multi-unit smooth muscle resembles skeletal muscle. So each muscle fibers are innervated by a separate nerve. So single unit smooth muscles are located in the walls of the hollow viscera such as gastrointestinal tract, renal tubules, uterus, etc. Whereas multi-unit smooth muscles are present in the axillary muscles of the eye. So though all these three types of muscles vary in their structure and function, they have certain common features. What are they? First one is the calcium. Calcium is the triggering factor that initiates the contraction in all these three types of muscles. Without calcium, muscle cannot contract. Second point is The interaction between actin and myosin filaments causes contraction. Actin and myosin filaments are nothing but contractile proteins which are present in the muscle mass, and the interaction between these two filaments actually causes contraction, that is shortening of the muscle fiber. Now with this brief introduction, let us move on to the subject proper. So I'll be discussing the topic under following headings. First, we'll see about the physiological anatomy of skeletal muscle. Then excitation, contraction, coupling. Then molecular basis of skeletal muscle contraction. Finally, about the basis of muscle relaxation. So this covers the competency numbers 3.4, 3.5, 3.6 and 3.9. First, let us learn about the physiological anatomy of skeletal muscle. So muscle has two ends. One is the origin, the other is the insertion. Both these ends are attached to bones through connective tissue layers called as tendons. So how does the muscle contraction result in voluntary movement? So as you can see in this video, when the biceps contracts, the joint angle decreases, resulting in flexion movement, and when triceps contracts, the joint angle increases, that results in extension movement. So the contraction and relaxation of the muscles are transmitted through the tendons to the joints, causing change in the joint angle, which can be transformed ultimately into movements.